Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I really enjoyed that conversation with Ramsey Russell. I tell you what, I just absolutely tortured his name. I had it in my notes wrong a couple of times, and it just, it'd be one way. It'd be Russell Ramsey 1 minute, and then Ramsey Russell the next. And I apologize to Ramsey for absolutely blowing his name. I've got it all corrected in my notes there, that's for sure. But, I had a terrific conversation with him back when I first started the show and talked about a really terrible accident he had when he was 15 years old and had to have very, very significant skin grafts. It was a burn accident. And he went on a mission after that just to fall in love with ducks. And he's a terrific leader in the duck community around the world, someone who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. So we'll have him back on the show on a regular basis. So now let's shift gears. And, it just turned out that this was the way it was, kind of a duck show today. Ramsey Russell at the beginning, and then my friend Houston Havens, who's head of the duck program at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and someone I really enjoy spending time with because they have a good sort of finger on the pulse to the duck season so far. Without any further ado, let me welcome Houston to Super Talk Outdoors. How you doing, Houston?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to see you, my friend. So I told you during the break, my son and two of his friends had an incredible hunt, but it was mostly gadwall and wood ducks. This past Saturday, they were just pouring into the hole where they were, and they've had a couple of duck hunts where they've had some teal and some widgeon. And they've had a few good hunts this year, but they just happen to be in a lucky place, I guess. Had good water and good habitat, and what we already know is habitat's key, isn't it?
It is for sure. That's kind of the story that we heard from whether it was people hunting private land or our public land hunters and managers. Managed water, managed habitat with water sources, whether that was permanent water areas that are just naturally going to be there, like breaks, or to a larger extent, pumpable water, groundwater, surface water pumped areas seem to do pretty well when we started off, but things have kind of gotten tough since then for sure.
Yeah, it has been tough. So how's the WMAs performed? Because you guys have really focused on making sure those hunts are always terrific. There's a lot of, I'm sure there's probably even more demand for those this year. So what's the story there?
Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head there. It's been, public areas have been really popular. They've that's been a function of lack of habitat for other places for people to go. And so those areas where we were able to pump water on quality managed habitat, again, started off really well. The first 2 or 3 weeks especially were really good, had some really good numbers. But as we mentioned earlier, just haven't had any help from weather, whether that's rain here to continue to add habitat, but more importantly, winter weather. Severe winter weather to our north just hasn't occurred. As a waterfowl hunter and waterfowl biologist, I'm going to remain an optimist and keep looking at the next couple of weeks until we don't have any time left in the season. But there looks like there's some potential in the 2-week forecast to get some help in both of those arenas that we very much need.
Yeah, you may have heard me mention this, but I talked to one rather large duck hunter, has a club, lots of duck hunters in the club. They had spent over $50,000 pumping sheet water in their holes, et cetera. And because the drought was so bad, just in several of the holes, it just sucked the water up, and they were having to turn the pumps back on. But this is kind of a common story across the state, isn't it?
It really is. And it's funny you mentioned that. We've been flying our early January waterfowl survey in the Mississippi Delta over last week, and we had some weather issues that have kind of bumped us into this week getting finished up. Hopefully by midweek we'll have that wrapped up. But that was an observation that we had, and it's not very common in my now 16-year career to see basically less wetland habitat going from December into early January. We saw several areas, just like you described, where you could tell that water had been pumped in those areas, and for whatever reason, likely because the ground just took that moisture down. There were areas that weren't flooded that had previously been flooded. And so in some areas, in some cases, we actually saw a decrease in available habitat.
Well, we had a good rain over the weekend, some more rain coming. It was a good wet rain where I was, just outside of Greenwood. And a friend of mine who hunted in Mentor City yesterday. We have I have a farm that I lease there that has some fingers that are dry as a bone right now, just absolutely dry as a bone. And he mentioned as he was hunting yesterday near one of the fingers that that wood ducks were pouring into this finger. It actually had a little bit of water in it. So that was it was reduced into one area. There was a little ditch that they dug out to help the drainage, and a little bit of water in that ditch. That's the only standing water anywhere near there. But that rain actually, provided a little bit more habitat. But man, we got a long way to go. We need a lot of rain to fix the situation we're dealing with right now, don't we?
That's right. We need it. We need it kind of to come in a hurry. We need that real runoff rain. We don't. We'll take any that we can get for sure. Whether it's slow and steady, but we'd rather have some pretty hard rains that are going to generate a lot of runoff. And there's a lot of boards and water control structures across the state that are waiting to capitalize on it. And if you've duck hunted after a rain and kind of learned how duck behavior works and all, that they can find it pretty quickly. And so things can turn around really quickly if we get the right conditions.
Yeah, it is. I call that get wet rain. There is rain, but then there's get wet rain. We need some extended get wet rain where those drainage basins are full and raging like white water, working that water toward the areas, these lakes and ponds and fingers and other structures they're just waiting on the water to get there. Yeah, I was looking, we got 3 more weekends, that's it. We got 3 more weekends. And of course, I think in weekends because that's the way I go. But, we got 3 more weeks, I guess. I don't know the exact number of days, but a lot of folks are waiting. What's the story up the flyway? About the same?
It's been, a lot of the same issues. Of course, hunting seasons to the north of us, those states select those seasons around general timing of waterfowl migrations. And so there are a lot of states and portions of states where seasons are closed already. And they've still got open water, no snow on the ground, and a lot of birds hanging around in those areas. It's kind of pervasive up and down, all the way into southern Canada as of last week. Now things may be changing now. Hopefully they are. So that's one benefit of being on the bottom end here is we've still got some time for things to shake out, and we've got a little bit of hunting season left.
Hey, so Houston, I heard someone say the other day they asked a question. When you have a year like this year where the ducks aren't getting back and you see on Instagram and some of the social media some pictures or videos of ponds just full of ducks and that kind of stuff, does that mean that the ducks that would have come down here are just getting shot further up the flyway? I mean, are they shooting our ducks?
Well, potentially, I guess that's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is, in a more normal year that we're shooting their ducks. And so I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the case. We would expect that, harvest rates in general for the country probably would be a little bit down in a year like this, just because of the reasons that we just mentioned, that, birds not making it to states until seasons were over, or hanging around in states after they're closed, and whether they make it here or not, and hopefully they will. But it's bad for most duck hunters. But the bright side is maybe we're returning a lot of birds back to the breeding grounds this next go around. They're in good shape, and that's always the hope that we can not have too many bad seasons in a row for sure. That's definitely the plan.
I like the way you're looking at that. That's an eternal optimist. But there's some truth to it actually. That birds may arrive here, probably will arrive here. I told you I leased a tree farm over in Chula a few years ago, and when we went over to look at it for the first time, there was some sheet water right outside the farm, and it was beautiful sheet water. And I filmed layers and layers and layers of mallards kind of circling this pond and coming into land. No, not a pond. It was a ag land. Sheet water is what it was. Wasn't set aside for duck hunting. It just happened to be sheet water that the ducks saw, and they were coming into it. But I'm not kidding you, there were thousands of ducks coming in, but it was February. It was like middle of February, or maybe even the end of February when I saw that. We're probably going to see something like that this year, aren't we?
We could, and some of that, there's a lot of different things going on there. Some of that is because when the duck season ends in Mississippi, there's, competing land uses, right? Especially in the Mississippi Delta, a lot of it's agricultural land. That water's going to come off pretty quickly when the duck season ends so they can get ready to start making a living again. And so a lot of years what we see in February is what we as biologists call the board pulling effect. It's just a limited amount of habitat on the landscape, and so birds are going to be using those available areas. They're not being pressured anymore, and so they're keying in on what's available, and sometimes it just looks like there's more ducks than there really are.
Well. Houston Havens, who's head of the duck program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. When we come back on the other side for the final segment, we'll ask Houston, what is he up to this time of year? What's he been doing? What's his activities involved? We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We have my friend Houston Havens, great guy. Worked so hard for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. One of the reasons I enjoy doing this show is celebrating the incredible men and women who've dedicated their lives to conservation efforts in the state, the North American wildlife model, the key to our success here in Mississippi. In fact, we were chatting during the break, this tree farm in Chula that I mentioned where we'd seen all the ducks. That's where I killed that deer we call Stickers. It was 160 and 7/8 9-point, just an absolute monster that we had 3 years of history with. And man, when you manage a resource, you can reap the benefits, can't you, Houston?
That's right. It's always, part of the fun of it is just, knowing, whether you're deer hunting and looking at trail cameras, knowing what's out there and, putting in the time and working toward a reward or the goal, whether it's, harvesting ducks or a deer like that, it really, really makes it special.
So what are you up to this time of year, man? Do you get to do a duck hunt yourself? Do you spend a lot of time driving around to WMAs? Do you spend a lot of time on the phone talking to people? What does Houston Havens actually do during duck season? Because most of your work happens before the season starts.
That's right, but I would say this time of year you really hit a lot of the big items there. Definitely, in free time we're trying to get out and do some hunting ourselves. A lot of our biologists are really into outdoor activities ourselves, outdoor recreation. Most of us hunt on public lands, and so we're using the areas that we're working on in our jobs. But this time of year, we're putting out a lot of information, a lot of content, a lot of monitoring, whether it's our aerial waterfowl surveys or looking at harvest on our public areas and putting out weekly reports, just trying to keep people informed on what's going on. Because duck season, it can change so much, for the better or worse, depending on the weather that we're getting, the habitat conditions. And so we get a lot of people who are interested in what's going on. They want updated information, and so they're calling us, they're reading those reports, they're emailing us to get as much information as they can to kind of spend their time at the right time for hunting.
Wow. And it's not like you have a huge staff to work with you, is it?
We stay pretty busy, but it's a great job. You hear the old saying, find something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's certainly the life of a wildlife biologist, I would say.
I love that, man. And we're lucky in the state to have so many dedicated people working at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks who are focused on the resource. And I know it's not always easy. It's hard work. I mean, it's hard work what you do. And it's a lot of what you do is behind the scenes, out of sight, out of mind. And what my job is in this show is to bring attention to your incredible work, so people can not only appreciate you and celebrate you, but also feel confident that we're doing the right kinds of things in the state to make our enjoyment of the outdoors as best as it possibly can be. In the case of ducks, it's not like that deer I mentioned where it might be born on the property and you can manage it. Maybe it's going to take the excursions that William talked about. Maybe it takes a lot of excursions and has to work its way through a gauntlet to get back on our property. Ducks are different, man. They're coming down that flyway. They come from Alberta and other parts of Canada and North America and work our way down here. It takes a lot of coordination. That's one of the work of Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, the other organizations that are focused on duck conservation efforts and habitat enhancement. We can't do enough habitat enhancement, can we?
That's right. Migratory bird management in general takes a lot of partners. Even on the local level, when we're working with private landowners, we're encouraging them to work with the landowner next to them, and continue to enhance the footprint because of making the local landscape and the continental landscape for waterfowl is definitely the name of the game, and habitat is the driving force for those populations.
Well, look, you have a big plan for the year as you enter into this new year, 2024. It's amazing that we're already here, but I bet you have a big to-do list, don't you?
We have a big to-do list for sure. Looking at part of our monitoring, as you mentioned, getting out on wildlife management areas, looking at things, especially in a dry year like this, where do we need to put in more infrastructure? Where can we improve things so we can prepare, maybe the next time this comes around? Hopefully it's a long time, maybe not even, I prefer for not getting another one of these years in my career, but we gotta always plan for what may be happening, and hearing from public hunters, what they're seeing, what they would like to see, and working toward those goals is always part of the job.
Well, I wish you a happy new year, my friend, and all the folks who you work side by side with at the department. Wish y'all all a happy new year. I mean, again, the North American wildlife model and the work that Mississippi is doing to support that is the key to our success. That's why I say that Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors in America. And, it's because of your hard work and the work to educate the public and help them understand why it's important for us to take certain approaches toward the management of the wildlife resource is the reason why we have the opportunity to enjoy it. So God bless you, my friend.
Well, we appreciate it, and thank you for the platform. We can tell people what we do.
You bet. And I enjoyed also my friend Ramsey Russell. I'll get that name right for sure as we go forward from Get Ducks. Go look him up. You'll be glad you did. Listen, stay safe in the outdoors. Always put safety first. Unload that gun. Always put safety first. God bless you, and we'll see you next Monday.